Welcome back to Professional Bookworms. I am Sid, and today I am going to be ranking every book in the Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, which is my personal favorite series of all time. Uh, I don't know how to do intros. I am not very good at them, so I'm just going to start. First of all, we are going to be talking about The Eye of the World, which is obviously the first book, and it is going into flaming good. Why do I love The Eye of the World so much? Uh, I don't love it nearly as much as a lot of the other books in the series. I do still really love it. Uh, I feel like I've been a bit too harsh on it in recent times, but there's one thing that I'm really grateful to the Wheel of Time show for, and that is because I've watched the first episode and I hated it, but it made me remember everything that I loved about the Eye of the World and put that to the forefront of my mind rather than the stuff that I didn't like. Because my general consensus on Eye of the World is it has a really good beginning and middle, and the ending is rushed and confusing and lots of different words. So because of that, I don't think I have the world can be my favorite. Because even then, the other books have great beginning, middles, and ends, whereas this one has a really good beginning, a really good middle, and a bad ending or a mediocre ending. Um, but there's also a lot of stuff that this book still does really well. Like first of all, I know some people criticize the character work in this because, like, specifically Rand, because apparently he's really boring in this book. I think it's a pretty good introduction to most of the characters. They do not quite reach the heights that they do eventually get to in the rest of the series, but the, thinking back on where part of the magic of the Wheel of Time is like the bigger tapestry. Like once you get to the 14th book and you look back on where all of these characters have come from, you realize just how much they've changed. And obviously, this book is where they've come from. So, because of that, the Eye of the World is in C tier, and there's a lot of other stuff it does great too, which is first of all, it builds a really great atmosphere from the prologue itself. The prologue is still my favorite prologue to anything I've ever read in my whole life because it's brilliant. I recently went back and reread it. uh, there's so much packed into it. It's the best thing ever. And it also does a really great building of the atmosphere. It's a great introduction to the world. Some of my best memories with this book are just like finding something new, flipping back to the glossary, and just like going on this rabbit hole. Because I think in these glossaries, if you see, we have, all right, it's not in this book, I guess, but if you go into something and you look at the glossary and you look at the definition of something, at the end of it, it'll say, see, this other entries within the glossary. So because of that, I could just go into multiple rabbit holes while thinking about each book and going into the back and try to find out what is. At that point, I had built up this kind of knowledge of the world that by the time I get to like books 3 and 4, I already know what some stuff is. So it's like, oh, this is finally getting introduced into the world because get going down those rabbit holes was really fun. That lesson as the series went on, because obviously I understood more about the world, but that was really fun to do. Along with that, what else the Eye of the World does is create a lot of tension at the beginning because, well, I won't explain how, but what I think the Wheel of Time episode one did really poorly is it was trying to make it was trying to make the show, it was trying to make the whole series more immediately interesting, and while they did that, they actually took away the stuff that made the book interesting in the first place, which is a lot of the mystery aspects, which is like, what is this, what is that, and those are questions that get answered then into the series, but also creates a lot of tension throughout the whole first book, which is completely lost, and that is why I have not gone past the first episode of that show. So there we go. Uh, Along with that, there's just I think that's all I have to say about the book. So yeah, I have the world C tier. Then we get into Great Hunt, and Great Hunt is the first S tier. I absolutely love the Great Hunt. This is the book for most people. I tell them, all right, if you don't if you want to know how far you need to go into the Wheel of Time to know if you really like it and you want to continue with the series, this is the book where you do that. Because Eye of the World is known for being very very obviously inspired by Lord of the Rings. uh this is the book where the Wheel of Time starts to come into its own. What Daniel Green will usually say is that in book four, the Wheel of Time becomes truly the Wheel of Time. I think it's a bit more gradual, which is like from book one, the seeds are planted, and in book two, it just really starts going, and in book three, it keeps growing into something else, and then by book four, it has completely matured into what we know as the traditional format for the Wheel of Time. But we're not here to talk about book four just yet, because Great Hunt is just packed with some of the best moments in the whole series. From the beginning of the book, it has a completely different feel. I feel like it's phenomenally written. It focuses a lot more on other characters other than just Rand. Uh, it has some. This is the point in which Rand starts becoming a lot more interesting. This is the book that made me really start loving Nynaeve, who is my favorite character in the whole series. If you didn't know, this is like the first moment where I'm just like, wow. And this is also a book where Robert Jordan like starts really pushing the boundaries, which is like he takes these concepts and these things that he has within the fantasy genre that he can do, and he applies them to make some of the best scenes ever. Flicker, you don't know what that is if you haven't read this book yet, but it is that scene is probably one of the greatest scenes I've ever read. At that point, it still is. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole series, because just think, whatever. There's a lot of character building. What I don't like about this book is Matt, because Matt in this book is just frustrating to read. But there is rarely a Wheel of Time book where multiple characters aren't frustrating to read, and I just love the expansion upon Rand, the expansion upon the world, the expansion on the larger story. The ending of this book is also phenomenal, which is something that you will see me talk about throughout the entire series, because Robert Jordan is the originator of the Sanderlands, pretty much. Uh, we need to come up with a term for the Robert Jordan Sanderlands. So Robert Jordan Barrage or something like that. But yeah, The Great Hunt is an absolutely phenomenal book. Uh, introduces so much to this world that comes to play a part in the larger series, and it really sets up where these characters go, even maybe even better than Eye of the World does. I don't know. I haven't. I need to reread Eye of the World, and then we get the Dragon Reborn, which goes into the B tier. No, A tier. That's A tier. I really love the Dragon Reborn. The problem with Dragon Reborn is that it is a really good book, but it is not nearly as good a book as The Great Hunt, which is phenomenal. That's I think it's just because Dragon Reborn has less of those moments that just completely wow me. I think on reread, there's a lot of stuff with Rand that I feel like I might appreciate a lot more, which I'm very excited for my eventual reread. I have no idea when that's going to happen, but it will. I can guarantee that. The Dragon Reborn is brilliant, and actually, some of my favorite moments that come up later in the series are foreshadowed or just set up by this book, and I really appreciate it for that. Um, Now, this is like the final book where the Wheel of Time follows its original format, because in the first three books, the Wheel of Time kind of follows the same kind of structure throughout the whole thing. Uh, this is the last book where that happens, and at this point, it kind of started to feel repetitive, which is like at where I'm really happy that it eventually breaks free of that. It didn't really feel that repetitive. I'm overstating it. It felt kind of repetitive. It didn't bother me all too much, but it's nice that he broke out of it almost immediately after it started bothering me. Um, what else about the Giant Reborn? I don't really have much else to say about this book that I can't talk about with spoilers. So next we will go into what is many people's favorite book in the whole series. It's not mine, but I still love it. The Shadow Rising is just a phenomenal book all around. First of all, there is a section in this book, and anyone who has read this book will know that is just brilliant, as in how it recontextualizes a lot of the cultures, two of the cultures specifically, a lot of the history, a lot of the world that has been set up throughout this whole series, and just completely makes you reassess what you have known about them this whole time. And it is just brilliant in that manner. This is, again, I've said this before. This is the book where the Wheel of Time completely becomes the Wheel of Time, whereas because this is where a lot more of the political aspects of the Wheel of Time come into play, a lot more of the format that the Wheel of Time will continue to like adhere by, not completely adhere by, but you can kind of break it down into the essentials with this uh, kind of from here on out. It kind of follows the same structure, not to the degree that the first two do, the first three do, but it kind of does. This establishes that. This makes some the characters even better. In my opinion, Perrin is the absolute goat of this book, uh, because he has some amazing plot lines in this book. I mean, he has one plot line, but it is just phenomenal. Even on my first read, this is the only Wheel of Time book that I've reread. I wanted to reread it just because of the Shadow Rising adaptation that was on the Wheel of Time show. Uh, I'm not watching that now for now, but it was fun to reread it. This book is really funny. This book has like three different climaxes too, and all of them are phenomenal. One of the most chilling sequences I've ever read in a book. I don't I understand why this book is some people's favorites because it is so effective. It is so fast paced, even though what it has coming with it within this story. I mean, it's a gigantic book, but it always has this sense of forward momentum. Each plot line is just phenomenal in this book. Each character perspective and each character is just expanded upon greatly. This is another book where Rand just increases. What you will find with Rand is that he just gets better with each book. That's that stays true for this one. So Shadow Rising is just a great book. It's not my favorite just because it is not as emotionally heavy as some of the other books. It is pretty emotionally heavy, especially Parents' plotline. There's just a one that completely devastated me. One scene within his plotline that completely devastated me. Outside of that, it's not really as emotionally compelling as like the final books of the series, some of the earlier ones. Uh, but I do really love it, so that is why it goes into A tier. From there, we go into the Fires of Heaven. I do really enjoy this book. It's going to go in between the Dragon Reborn and the Shadow Rising. This is very action-packed book from what I remember. There's a lot of tension that builds up throughout the whole thing, and well, the entire final act of this book is phenomenal. Again, I've said that for each and every one of these books, but the entire final act of this book is phenomenal. It's basically like a Shadow Rising Part Two, in my opinion. The one thing that I don't like about this book is that immediately after Shadow Rising, in which Perrin just blows everyone's mind with how amazing he is in Shadow Rising, this book has literally zero Perrin. I think he's mentioned, but outside of that, he just doesn't appear in this book at all, which is frustrating. But uh, it is how it is, I suppose. But I think this book frustrates people because a lot of Rands are more sexist, like specifically like not sexist exactly. I like that aspect of his character just because it's interesting to read. It is extremely frustrating, but that's just what Robert Jordan is good at writing. And the longer you go into the series, the more you appreciate the fact that he can write frustrating characters really well. I think because of that, I think, and again, the ending of this book, the entire final section, there's like two plot lines, two climaxes in this book, but it is just great. It's like the ultimate Sandermatch because one of the most unexpected things that could happen in this book just happens, and it is heart wrenching. And like especially on reread, I imagine that moment is going to hit harder just because I have a fuller context of what that character was going to do. So that is that is my opinion. Fires of Heaven really is a great book. The action in this book is really great. One of the biggest moments of this book is just off screen, and that frustrated me on my first read through. Yeah, again, it really acts like a Shadow Rising Part Two, and I love it for that. So from there, we go into Lord of Chaos, which a lot of people say drags. I disagree. I do not think, from what I remember about this book, because there's some specifics that I kind of jumbled in. Well, the thing with Wheel of Time is that since it's 14 books and there are like, okay, I'll compare it to Stormlight. Stormlight has natural like breaking points in between each book. because a Stormlight book is usually very contained. There are big changes in the world with each book, and well, I mean that happens with Wheel of Time too, but it's less continuous. Like there is usually at least some time in between books with a Stormlight book. Wheel of Time, it's really just one continuous story, and it because of that it kind of blends together for a while. So this book has actually got like there's stuff that happened in this book that I thought happened in a book after it, and maybe sometimes even two books ahead or like three. Um, and because of that I just forget how much like actually happens in this book, and then when I look back on it, it is absolutely insane. One of my like when I was reading it, it was one of my least favorite parts of the series. Looking back on it, I actually really love that he did that because of what it does for the rest of the series. I think at that point I didn't like what he did with it, just because I didn't like that character. I'm being really vague right now, if you can't tell, for a specific reason, because it's hard to talk about these books spoiler free without notes. So, but when you talk about Lord of Chaos, you are going to talk about the ending, because the ending is mind blowing. Uh, I could have made a joke there. Um, First of all, the amount of stuff that just changes with this book. It's something directly set up by the end of Fires of Heaven, and you really inspect like how how everything else is changing within this book. This is the book where Rand really comes into himself. Like I really loved Rand in the first five books. This is like the one where he became like my favorite character. Like he can duke it out with Nynaeve all he wants. Sometimes it's Nan, sometimes it's Nynaeve. This is the book where that happens because of a new element to his character that's introduced within this book, and I love it. It's insane what happens with him, and it sets up one of the most interesting aspects of his character arc, and that's why I love it so much. So that is like the two things I remember when I think of Lord of Chaos are Nynaeve, Rand, and the ending. The ending is just so life with tension, so amazing, so world changing. I love that ending. Everyone else who has read the series also loves that ending, and I think part of the reason that people say that the area after this is the slog is just because this book set a bar for just the amount of crazy shit that can happen. That some people call a Crown of Swords part of the slog, even though it is completely different in pace and what actually happens and the amount of stuff that happens than the actual slog. So let's get into the slog. So Crown of Swords is the first Wheel of Time book that is going underneath the Eye of the World. Not because it's a bad book. I actually really enjoy it, and I do not think it's part of the slog because it just doesn't fit in with the rest. I'm a big slog defender, and me calling this not part of the slog isn't really a compliment or an insult. Uh, but it just doesn't really fit in with the rest of the slog, in my opinion. So there we go. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens. There is one really controversial aspect of this book, and I have seen what Robert Jordan has said about it, and in some manner I understand what he's saying about it, but like it did not come across like that. It was really weird to read, and because of that I do not like that aspect of it whatsoever. I don't think he handled it well enough for me to have like that aspect. I don't think actually I don't know if anyone could have handled that well enough for me to like that aspect of the book, that controversial part. But outside of that, it's a really good book. It builds up upon a lot of stuff that happens in Lord of Chaos. I was hoping for more Perrin in this book. We didn't get that much Perrin in this book. What we did get of Perrin in this book was all right. It wasn't that great. But yeah, I did really enjoy this book. The ending is pretty good. It's not great like the last couple of books have been, but it's pretty great. It's pretty good. Oh, actually, this book has again like two separate endings. The second one is much better, in my opinion. Uh, yeah, so that's why I like it a lot more than a lot of people, than some people. But I also like it a lot less than other people, and because of that, I have more mixed opinions about it. Yeah, there we go. A Crown of Swords right underneath the Eye of the World. The Pot of Daggers. Okay, hot take. Pot of Daggers is easily the most underrated Wheel of Time book by a long shot. I actually just I was surprised. Like, okay, the slog, it's coming. Uh, Nothing's gonna happen in this book. It's gonna be boring. I was just surprised how much I actually just loved the book. Just straight up loved it. Um, the Part of Daggers. A lot of the book, like you will notice, nothing's really happening, but it's really enjoyable. Nothing happening because you're just spending some time with the characters. I love people don't like Baron in this book or just the slog in general because there's a plot line that he follows that people just dislike in the slog. I actually really love that plot line. What it because of what it does for him as a character. It's really interesting to see. And in this book too, it I just straight up love that plot line. I didn't actually love is a bit of a strong word. I am again overblowing it. Um, it was a really good plot line. It introduced some interesting aspects for him. The final scenes with parents plotline in this book, which is great. Uh, I love that. Elaine had a couple scenes; she was pretty good. Um, a lot of the more political aspects of this book were really enjoyable. Rand doesn't get a lot of time in this book. What he does get, this is a pattern you're going to notice. Rand doesn't get a lot of time in these books, in some of these books, but what he does get is just phenomenal. The final scene of this book is just like heart wrenching in a weird way because part of it is just a character that you barely know, but also not. So, but I just think this book is brilliant. I do not. This is like this book is the main reason I'm a slog defender because I just straight up love the book. So yeah, Part of Daggers above Dragon Reborn. This is gonna be a hot take. Winter's Heart is going right above the Eye of the World in Jesus. Okay, flaming good. Again, this is another book which, when people talk about it, they are going to talk about that ending, and rightfully so because the ending is phenomenal. And also because I just don't think I remember much about it outside, like off the top of my head. I'm sure if I like read or something, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. But like, this is one of those books where it's like, did that happen in Pot of Daggers? Did that happen in Crosses of Twilight? Did this happen in Crosses of Twilight? Did this happen in Pot of Daggers? I don't know. But I will say, and I don't know. So like off the top of my mind, the specifics of this book are kind of eluding me, which is weird. Um, but I do remember this book. I do really enjoy. Actually, it's more hit or miss because, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, it fits there more. So, this is the first one where I just like actively kind of dislike the Wheel of Time plotline. It's very political, but it's not like I don't think it's very engaging. Uh, what I like about this book is that it is the originator of one of my favorite chapters and chapter titles within the entire series. In I think it's the Gathering Storm. This is where the famous Gathering Storm chapter title comes from. You, if you know, you know. Um, and I love that. I love it for that. But along with that, the ending is phenomenal. It also plays a part as to like how disappointing the next book is in a lot of aspects. I do still enjoy the next book, but not as much. So you know what? Let's talk about Crosses of Twilight. Crosses of Twilight is the one of the only Wheel of Time books I would rate underneath 4 stars. I think um, on good days there's two, which is Crosses of Twilight and New Spring. Another hot take, I would put New Spring below Crosses of Twilight. On good days it's just those two. On bad days it is also Winter's Heart. Um, what can I say about Crosses of Twilight? Well, there's something set up really heavily with Winter's Heart, and Crosses of Twilight just doesn't really deliver, and it basically doesn't acknowledge it whatsoever. There's a couple of scenes where it does acknowledge it, but not really. So there's something that's really heavily set up in Winter's Heart, and it's just not. You just get nothing. Uh, you want a specific character's plotline in Winter's Heart to be continued in Crosses of Twilight. You don't get that. Uh, so that's why it is so frustrating. Now, listen, the other aspects I don't like about Cross of Twilight, the plotline that I didn't like in Winter's Heart continues on into this book, and it's still not very engaging to me. It's probably just worse because it was just kind of boring. And this is where Robert Jordan just hits like peak um, long chapter. Like, I think before the slog, the chapter length was a lot more variable, whereas with Crosses to Twilight, they just all end up being like 40, 50 pages each. And this plot line has like 5 chapters in a row, and it's boring. So it's like 200 pages back to back of just stuff that I don't care about. If it wasn't based off of just like off the top of my head what I'm remembering about that plotline, it could be cut from this book entirely, and I wouldn't really care. Just a couple scenes. Honestly, I think a couple scenes could have still worked. This is the only time I will ever say that for a book. Most of the time, when people are like, "There's so much that could be cut from this book," I'm like, "No, no, it couldn't have. No, you cut out stuff from the Way of Kings, you lose the best parts of the Way of Kings." I die on that hill, but that's a side tangent. But this is like the one of the only books where I'm just gonna be like, yeah, this could be cut, and I wouldn't care at all. Actually, I would care that it was cut because it would make me happy. So yeah, Crosses of Twilight. So I've been a bit of a negative one. What I like, do like about this book, I like where it takes one specific character. Right, people don't like this character's plotline within the slog. I actually remember really enjoying it. Uh, so that's cool. What else? Well, there's actually 2 or 3 plotlines that I really enjoy in this book. Uh, Two of them I enjoyed. Two of them, one of them I enjoy a bit less, but I do still enjoy, and one I absolutely despise, which is what you will find out soon enough. So, Crossroads of Twilight is just it's one of the only Wheel of Time books that's like under 3 stars. Now, what you will notice is that there's only one book in S tier so far. You know what? Let's fix that. Shadow Rising goes up into S tier. It's a great book. That's why it goes into S tier. I feel like on reread, Lord of Chaos could go into S tier. I don't know about Fires of Heaven. It might do actually, but for now, Great Hunt and Shadow Rising are like the best of the best so far. I do really enjoy Shadow Rising, even though I was like, oh, uh, I get why people say it's their favorite. It's just not mine. Let's get into my favorite. Knife of Dreams is just a brilliant book all around. Uh, so let's talk about this book. First of all, unfortunately, this is Robert Jordan's final book with the series, which is very sad. Like immediately, that knowledge is just kind of emotional in and of itself because this is the last time you're gonna have be able to spend like this is a whole Robert Jordan book. So that's just kind of a downer, but it is a hell of a book to finish off on. First of all, what I love about Knife of Dreams is that it can be there is a case to be made that it is any of the main characters' book. Um, some of the main characters they get like 1 or 2 chapters within the within this book. They are going to be some of the most brilliant chapters you have ever read. Chapter 20, the Golden Crane, is one of my favorite chapters of all time, and it is that character's only chapter within the whole book. uh, it is brilliant. Second, like the character who like has the most screen time within this book, or like has the most like substantial plotline within this book, and like most consistent, like he's there in beginning, middle, and end. He's like my least favorite in this book, but even then his plotline is just great, and like he is the one you can make the most case for that. uh, this is his book, in my opinion. He is my least favorite character in this book. But he still gets some phenomenal moments within this book. What Knife of Dreams does really well is like Crossroads of Twilight is a big setup book. Knife of Dreams is a big payoff book because there is a lot of payoff in this book, and that's all I will say. It is just phenomenal. It's really funny to me that we get my least favorite book in the series and pretty much everyone's least favorite book in the series, and then my favorite book of all time. That's funny to me. So that is why Knife of Dreams is in S tier and other things. Well, there's like each character gets like brilliant scenes, like almost perfect scenes within this book, and I just love it for that. Like my least favorite plotline in the entire series has a pretty satisfying ending within this book. Uh, a lot of people's least favorite plotline within the series also gets a conclusion. This is the one that I was talking about. People really don't like that character's plotline within the slog. I actually really enjoyed it, and that's why I just love the conclusion to it all the more. Then there's also just okay. Another part that I love about this book is just like yeah, this is where it's ramping up. Like okay, the end is coming because there's just so much stuff that just like gets more like funny thing about Wheel of Time is that it just like gets more fantastical as it goes on, which is weird. Um, it just like by the like uh I can't say how, but like it's just a fun part, and that is part of like the fact that it's like, oh, the darkness is coming, the end is on the way, and this book like really hammers in that sense of foreboding really well, and that is another reason why it's my favorite. It is just phenomenal in every single aspect. Some of my favorite chapters of all time, maybe the most underrated chapter of all time within the series is in this book. I never see people talking about it, but it just sent gave me chills, and it is with my least favorite character of the Emmons Field Five, and it is just one of my favorite chapters in the whole series. That is, I love it. Um, so yeah, then from Knife of Dreams we go into the Brandon Sanderson books. The Gathering Storm is my second favorite book within the entire series. The Gathering Storm is brilliant just because like it has maybe the best one book character arc I have ever read. This is something Jake Bishop has said. Yeah, I agree. It's true because Gathering Storm, it focuses on two main characters of the series. So like, what Towers of Midnight and this book do are like, okay, Gathering Storm focuses on two characters. Takes two characters, focuses on their plot lines. Towers of Midnight takes two other characters, focuses mainly on their plot lines. Uh, Gathering Storm, the two characters it focuses on, are my second, are like one of my favorites and my least favorite of the five. And both of their plot lines are phenomenal. What I know is just like the plot line, the first plot line is written by like Sanderson, the other one is written by Jordan, mostly by Jordan. Uh, I was so surprised when I found out like one that I liked more was written by Sanderson, but like really both are just great. This is like the Wheel of Time book, like with the most sense of just like forward momentum. Every scene in this book is basically perfect except a couple of Matt. Um, what a lot of people say about Matt in this book is just like Sanderson didn't nail him. He did not. He did not get him down very well because this is just like not Matt's best book because his character voice is off, the way he acts is off. The chapters with him are kind of weird. I did enjoy them, but they weren't very Matty. Outside of that, those other chapters, every other scene within those first two plot lines is just brilliant. Uh, this is like one of the only books where it's just like whenever I'm somewhere else and I am not reading this book, I'm like, ah, I'm here, but I could be reading The Gathering Storm. That is how amazing it is. The ending to this book is phenomenal, and it's if you try to pitch it, explain it to someone, it's just like, why are you freaking out? It's okay, but like without the context of the whole series, no, it's just brilliant. It is just perfect down to every last detail. So many of my favorite moments within the series are in this book. So many of my favorite character arcs are concluded in this book. So much is just phenomenal in this book. I love it. This takes what I said, that sense of foreboding from from the Knife of Dreams, and carries it over here and just amplifies it even further with both plot lines, the Sanderson and Jordan plotline. So I absolutely love this book. Towers of Midnight. It's pretty good. I this one, yeah. Actually, you know what? I think it's above Pot of Daggers. Terminator is a pretty damn good book for is what I'll say about it. Like when you Jesus, okay, when you think about this book, it's just like the moments in this book aren't as like big and like amazing as Gathering Storm, which is why it's below. And it's easily my least favorite Sanderson books. It's still great. It's still a great book. Towers of Midnight. Uh, but there's still really great moments both for the characters, for Matt, for everyone. It is just perfect. Not perfect. I have my plot. There's one plot line that again people don't really like in this book. I just genuinely like with that plot line in the slog that people don't like. I at least kind of get it. With this one, I don't. Uh, so yeah. Towers of Midnight is just a great book all around. Uh, the entire final like battle sequence of this book is just written by Jordan, and it is phenomenal. It just like delivers on something that's been building up since book five so well. There's like a moment where it's just like it's almost like those moments in Heroes of Ages where it's just like there's this small thing that's been building up throughout the whole thing, and then once you get there, you're like, how did I not realize that? that is there in this book. It is great. I Part of me is just like really impressed as to he plotted out one of Sanderson plotted out one of the plot lines in this book, because this character had apparently had barely any material left over for Perrin, but I feel like the way Sanderson handled was just great all around. So yeah, Towers of Midnight is just a phenomenal book, and then we get into the best ending of all time. Boom, number three. Why do I love this book so much? Well, it can't be my favorite because Gathering Storm and Knife of Dreams exist, but it is still brilliant. It is easily the best ending. I know the final scene is written by Jordan. That makes me very happy. That final scene is some of the most emotional I have ever gotten. The Gathering Storm and this book are some of the only books that have like pushed me to the brink of tears. Do with that what you will. Reason it can't be my favorite is just because of how heavily it focuses on the action. And while I do love Jordan and Sanderson, their action isn't my favorite part about them. The moments before, like leading up to the final battle, are just some of my favorite moments within the entire series. There's just some great dialogues, some great like reunions, great everything. I just love that about this book so much. The actual action, like the last battle, I read in basically one sitting. The chapter, the last battle, this whole book is basically the last battle, but like that infamous chapter, that famous chapter, infamous is the wrong word, that's longer than the entire first Harry Potter book, is just could not stop reading it. I read it all in one night. I stayed up till 1 a.m. reading that chapter because and by the time I got there, I had to stop just because it had taken such an emotional toll on me that I was like, okay, I will finish this book tomorrow. And I did finish the book the next day, and it was brilliant. That is this book is just perfect. Like again, I've already spoken about my problem with it because like at the beginning of like that whole action sequence, it was like I wasn't really completely enjoying it. I was enjoying like moments here and there. At some point, it just reached okay, it just reached a level of just like, okay, I'm going to stop at this point, like by the next POV swap. And then the POV swap ends and I'm like, okay, I can't stop there, I'm gonna stop at the next one. No, can't stop there, can't stop there, can't stop there, until I'm just like, I have to give up. I'm like, okay, I'm not sleeping until this chapter is over. And that was a good decision, I think. So uh so along with that, it's just it's basically it's just such a great book, and the emotional toll, I already said that, is that it took on me is just so heavy. There are moments where I just straight up wanted to stand up and cheer. There are moments where I just straight up got up off of my bed and started pacing back and forth while reading the actual book, just because I could not physically contain the excitement. um there's so much about this book that I absolutely love. And again, it is the best ending. For what this book will do is that it will take the choices that are made in this book, the character arcs that are concluded in this book. Not everyone is completely satisfied with how the character arcs wrapped up. I think, and just like how it's left off, but I think it actually kind of strengthens the series. And I can't talk about why without spoilers. So what this book does is just like by the end of it, the choices that are made and the character arcs just like strengthen the theme so much that like once you look back on the rest of the series, it like casts that shadow and taints it to the point where you have to look at the rest of the series within the series with those themes in mind. And it elevates the series so much, because I will admit, while I was reading the series, I wasn't like paying much attention to the themes that are actually presented within the story. um, but like this book just gave me a revelation, and now like I look back at those books and I see the brilliance of what they are setting up for the rest of the series, and it's just brilliant. It's the best ending to anything I have ever read in my life. So yeah, Memory of Light is a great book. By the way, banger of a title. It's just a great title for a book. A Memory of Light. Like, come on. All right, yeah, that's the end of this. Bye.